I suppose if this was a camp meeting, some religious group, you would call my remarks a testimonial. I fell in love with my planet, the oceans, a half century ago. As you saw in the video clip, I grew up on the San Francisco Bay. Oh, they're going to show my slides. I was going to skip those because they were all used up. Well, I'll stroke through them pretty fast. I grew up on San Francisco Bay, and as the clip intimated, I could watch, in fact, I watched them build the Golden Gate Bridge. I was raised by a single working mother, didn't have any toys. That was my mega toy. And I watched those ships go out and disappear over the horizon, come back in, and I wondered what was there. What is it? Well, I found out what was there and beneath it. And through the mechanism of being in the Navy, I, in 1959, joined the Bathurst Gap Trieste program. It was owned by the Office of Naval Research. The Trieste was built by Auguste and Jacques Piccard. You heard from the younger Piccard yesterday with all the 3 generations of explorers, a truly remarkable family in exploration. And I was a submarine officer at the time and went into that project thinking, well, this is kind of interesting. The Navy had asked for volunteers. And so I thought, well, that looks like a good thing to do. I can find out what's inside the ocean. And I put my hand up, and I was selected. I met their high standards because there was only one volunteer, me. There's a lesson there for all of us. A lot of people are uncomfortable with new. If something's new, then if we never had it, how could we want it? That kind of sort of philosophical tail chasing. But I put up my hand, and a year later, I'm on the bottom of the deepest place in the world ocean, along with Bertrand Piccard's father, Jacques Piccard. And that was quite a day at the office, I must say. And after we came back up to the surface, Jacques and I were sitting topside waiting to be picked up by the boat. It was a 9-hour dive. And we were thinking, well, how long before somebody comes back here and does really useful work? Because we're sort of test pilots. We're doing engineering tests of the platform. And, you know, can it go down 7 miles, come back up, and do effective work? The answer was yes. And we finally came to the point that, well, maybe about 2 years, somebody will come back. Well, we were off by 51 years. It was Jim Cameron last year that actually came back for the second time. Is this important? Yes. Because if we don't understand the deep ocean trenches and those basic processes, then we can't understand the general tectonic makeup, if you will, of the crust of our planet. But we're just not going there now. And Sylvia talked about this lack of interest in marine research. And of course, what the daunting task for us today is how do we talk about 71% of our planet, a volume of 360 million cubic miles. You could put all of the people on our planet in 1 cubic mile. How do you talk about that in 10 minutes? It's almost insulting to you. So all we can do is sort of nibble around the edge. So I hope if our generalities are here today, it's only because this would deserve a much broader treatment. Well, anyway, back to Guam. We did the dive and thought that this would launch a whole new wave of deep ocean explorations, manned explorations of the ocean. Well, it didn't happen. And one of the problems today is that only 10% of the world ocean has been adequately explored. 10%, 90% is left to go. How are you going to do that? There's not enough money in all the treasuries in the world to build a fleet of research ships that could do that 90%. And if you could build them, how are you going to populate them? What kind of universities are going to grind out PhDs, ocean science? We don't have it. We can't do it. We have to find other ways. And so we're increasingly looking at robotics, unmanned vehicles, things of this sort that can do a lot of the dumb science in the ocean. That is, doesn't require presence of a human. And that's where folks like you come in. The AUVs that can be programmed to go off and do work in the ocean, the ROVs on the end of tethers. There'll still be room for man exploring in the ocean. And woman, I'm sorry, thank you. Mankind, humankind, okay? And the thing is that it's hard to quantify that, but you all know that from the space program. They've been asking that since the beginning. Why man? and it's sort of imprecise. All I can say is when the first lunar lander went up there and unmanned, picked up some stuff, came back to Earth, I didn't go outside and look up. I thought, well, that's good, nice technological feat, well done, everybody. But when Neil and Buzz were up there, I went out on my deck and I looked up and I said, there's two of me up there. I connected with it. And I think that's the important thing. But Jim, I guess, put it more inelegantly last year after he made his deep dive, and he said, what kid wants to grow up to be a robot? So there'll always be room for the trained mind and the trained eye in the ocean, in addition to all the machines. But the heavy lifting, that 80% I'm talking about, 90% that needs to be looked at, will have to be done with unmanned systems. I see no easy way around it. Okay, coming back to my particular journey, I had hoped that there'd be a big rush of building more submersibles to do more work in the ocean. Because what they do is they take the trained eye and the trained mind into the environment, in situ work. Think about the field sciences, biology and geology. The biologist doesn't send some graduate student out on a motorcycle and say, go out and get some stuff and bring it back and we'll see if we can figure out what's going on. The geologist doesn't send somebody out in a pickup truck, pick up a couple of rocks and bring them back to the lab and we'll try and figure out what's going on. They go into the field, they observe the landforms, they observe the biota, how the creatures are interacting with each other. Then you take your samples. But since 1870, the beginning of oceanography, that's how we've done it. We're on an opaque interface in a ship, reaching into the ocean with artificial hands and cameras, later, artificial eyes, bringing up some crushed stuff and say, tell me all about it. It's like flying over New Mexico in the dark in a balloon and lowering down a grapnel hook and bringing up a Gila monster, maybe a fireman, Toyota pickup truck, and then you go and give a learned paper at Aspen about the characteristics of this landform we call New Mexico. A little silly, and maybe I over-exaggerated, but the point is you have to be inside the sea for so much of this work, especially in the observational science. Now, a chemist doesn't care. Chemical oceanography, you can't see chemistry by looking out a window, but in certain parts of our work, it's very important. So the way ahead is going to be very difficult because we're not making national investments in the oceans like we should. No country is. And what concerns me is, as Sylvia intimated, sea level is rising. First of all, because our planet's warming up, the water in the ocean swells up. So a lot of that sea level rise right now is due to the warming of the oceans. It's swelling up, if you will. But it also, the warming of our planet is melting the ice, land-bound ice. The ice on the Arctic Ocean, yeah, that comes and goes, and it'll probably be ice-free by 2030. The sea ice, that doesn't make any difference. It's floating already. But 11% of the fresh water on our planet, the ice on our planet, is in Greenland. And that's melting. Now, that you have an annual cycle, it comes and goes. But now it's not coming as much as it's going. And all of that going into the ocean is raising sea level. Not a lot, but when it all melts, sea level would rise about between 15 and 17 feet. It'd be a long time from now if that happens. The Antarctic is now beginning to lose land ice into the Southern Ocean. And when that all melts, then you're probably going to look at a sea level rise of about 280 feet. So it's worth thinking about. There are already nations on our planet that have gone to the UN and said, look, by 2050 or 2040, we're going to have to get up and leave. Think about that. An entire nation's going to have to move. Where are they going to go? These are serious problems, folks. You can't build seawalls. You're not going to keep it out. 8 out of 10 cities in the world, 8 out of 10 are coastal cities, and they're going to flood. We saw in Sandy, we had the water surge, storm surge, over the southern part of Manhattan Island. That's about what we would have if the ice in Greenland melted, that rise, but it's just temporary. But it came up over the southern part of Manhattan Island. Goodbye Wall Street. Probably not a bad thing, but nevertheless, this is irreversible. Nature operates in a very subtle and irresistible way, and we can't stop it. What we've got to do is plan to get ahead of it. And we can't do that planning unless we understand the damn ocean, because that's driving all of this. So it's very, very important. We've got to pay attention, whether you live in Santiago or St. Louis, Shanghai, or San Francisco. It affects every one of us every day. And few of us really understand that. In the words of the great guru of communication theory, the late Professor Marshall McLuhan, he said, on Spaceship Earth, there are no passengers. We're all crew. So let's get all hands on deck. Thank you very much. I'm sorry you stared at that graphic for a long time, but while Sylvia was talking, I was reintegrating my talk, and then the little teaser that they showed you video, that used up most of my stuff. So I stand in front of you as a guy that just articulated a talk he hadn't heard before. So we're all in the same boat. Excuse the pun. Thank you.